Good afternoon and welcome to George Mason University. Mason is very, very pleased to host a small and minority-owned business roundtable. And our goal here today is very simple. We want to help entrepreneurs in and around Virginia learn about how they can benefit from the bipartisan infrastructure bill. This is a big part of our mission here at Mason. And for those of you who don't know who George Mason University is, we are the largest four-year institution in the state of Virginia with more than 39,000 students. We are also Virginia's most diverse institution, and we look forward to serving all of you and serving you extraordinarily well. Today, we have more than 600 companies represented, and we are truly thrilled and honored that you can be a part of today's program. The Infrastructure and Investment and Jobs Act is a bipartisan bill of historic magnitude. Two of the architects of the bill are actually here with us today. Virginia Congressman Gerry Connolly and Virginia Congressman Bobby Scott. Congressman, I want to thank both of you and your colleagues on both sides of the aisle for your hard work and dedication to not just the citizens of the state of Virginia, but to the citizens of the whole country. And the reality is that this bill will have global implications as well. I'd also like to thank and welcome two additional special guests today. One is Maurice A. Henderson. He's the Senior Advisor to the U.S. Department of Transportation. And the second is Sandra Norman, who is the Division Administrator for Civil Rights for the Virginia Department of Transportation. Sandra will moderate our discussion this afternoon. I'd also like to thank the many congressional offices for taking part in supporting this event today. Look, we can truly accomplish so much when we work together. As we get started here, what may dawn on you is why George Mason? Why would we be a part of this? And why is this so important to us? Well, look, Mason manages the 27 small business development centers strewn throughout the state of Virginia. Okay, and we've been managing those for quite some time. You can find more information on the state's SBDCs at virginiasbdc.org. But we haven't just been managing these entities. We've actually had some significant outcomes. Our small business development centers and our procurement technical advanced assistance centers, or PTACs, and other related programs are all represented here today as well. And over this last year, we've had an estimate $2 billion impact on the state of Virginia. And that has come from hosting more than 10,000 and supporting more than 10,000 small business. More than half of these businesses have been led or supported by women or people of color. We've conducted more than 27,000 hours on one-on-one counseling over this past year, hosted 863 events and workshops with more than 18,000 attendees, some virtual, some in person. And we have helped Virginia small businesses earn $1.7 billion in government contract. This is a big deal for us. And we're not stopping there. Our biggest program, our flagship program going forward, is what we're calling the Mason Virginia Promise. And that is a guaranteed pathway towards a bachelor's degree or your own business for every single Virginian who wants it. And we are just excited to have this opportunity to engage today. Before I turn it over to Sandra Norman, who'll be leading you today, I want to thank you again for taking part in our roundtable here at George Mason. Mason is truly the university for all Virginians, and it's programs like this that actually help us elevate and emphasize that. So take it away, Sandra.
Good afternoon, and thank you so much, President Washington and George Mason University family, for hosting this important event to talk about the infrastructure bill, the bipartisan bill that's going to help grow Virginia's businesses as well as its economy, and even assist individuals who's looking for some career changes or a career in the transportation industry. I am Sandra Norman. I am the Civil Rights Division Administrator for the Virginia Department of Transportation. VDOT, as you know, is the third largest transportation agency behind our neighboring state, North Carolina, and Texas. So we have a lot of work and a lot of infrastructure, a lot of investment that's going to be going into this economy. We're dedicated to creating jobs in Virginia by creating opportunities for businesses to grow and businesses to start up. We expand contracting opportunities for small women and minority-owned businesses. We create opportunities again for individuals who want to have a career in our industry through our outreach initiatives, through our pipeline programs, and we deliberately connect to our high schools across the state. We are definitely committed to growing Virginia's economy. So as my role in civil rights, I have two major programs. I have the internal program, which is our EEO program for our state employees that work for VDOT, as well as the external program. And this is where our DBE, we run the federal DBE program, the Disadvantaged Business Program. We set goals on all projects that have federal funding, as well as federal eligible to receive federal funding, as well as our small women and minority-owned contracts. That is the SWAM program for the Commonwealth of Virginia in our construction program. Under the DBE program, we also have the BOW Center, kind of set up like your development center for the small businesses. The BOW Center is the Business Opportunity Workforce Development Center. Once you are certified as a DBE, we ask that you come and enroll in our BOW Center, and we have resources from the federal government, FHWA, to help businesses, again, start up, help businesses manage their portfolio, help them grow. We take a look at a business assessment plan. We do business plans for them, and we offer a variety of services to our small businesses. Again, we also have our small business enterprise program, and that is an opportunity for subcontractors to become primes. And we look at projects anywhere from over $100,000 up to $750,000 that we can set goals on, or set that aside, if you will, for our subcontractors who want to become prime. I am definitely involved in setting up partnerships, outreach, because we can't do this by ourselves. This is a lot of infrastructure dollars coming to Virginia. We have to have partners to make sure that we can deliver the program that the federal government expects us to, and that Congressman Connolly and Congressman Scott have architect. They know that we're going to get it right in Virginia. And I'm excited again to be with you all today. And so I'm not going to take up much time of letting you know who I am, because the main players are here, and we definitely want to give them an opportunity to have some discussion with us. Again, thank you, George Mason, for hosting this. And let me now introduce you to Congressman Connolly. It gives me great pleasure to welcome and introduce Congressman Gerry Connolly, who represents Mason's Fairfax campus in Congress. The Congressman is loved by the Mason community because of his many years of dedicated service to them. By way of reputation, Congressman Connolly is known as someone who gets things done, willing to work with all sectors and interests to advance the common goals. Nowhere is more evident than the area infrastructure development, his leadership in Congress, and before that, on the Board of Supervisors of Fairfax County is well known. For example, Congressman Connolly has played a key role in securing federal dollars for transportation improvements in Northern Virginia, including completion of the Fairfax County Parkway, widening of the Prince William County Parkway, providing ongoing support for rail to Dulles, and securing the annual federal commitment of $150 million for regional metro system. He is committed to helping the small business community thrive and prosper. On behalf of all of us, we welcome Congressman Gerry Connolly.
Sandra, thank you so much. Thank you for what you do, and thanks so much for such a kind introduction. President Washington, it's great to be with you and to see you again. Thank you for hosting us here today. And of course, my dear friend, Congressman Bobby Scott, who is a trailblazer, the dean of the Virginia Congressional Delegation, and really important for all of us here in Virginia, chairman of the powerful Education and Labor Committee, and has been the author of so much legislation in this Congress and the preceding Congress. And we really appreciate his leadership. It's a privilege to call him a friend and a colleague. And we're so glad to have him with us today. Whether it's a new veteran who has an idea for a startup or an existing business hoping to explore the opportunities created by government contracting, Jody and her team at the Mason Enterprise Center have always made themselves available to work with constituents seeking to start or expand small businesses. I believe that center is an incredible resource, and I'm glad to fight every year in Capitol Hill for federal funding for our small business development centers. I can't think of a better school in the state to host today's event. As President Washington indicated, George Mason University is the most diverse university in Virginia. It's the largest university in Virginia, and it's the fastest growing university in Virginia. And it's my privilege to represent the main campus of George Mason. Northern Virginia has the most concentrated IT job market in the United States outside of Silicon Valley. 1 in 4 jobs here in Fairfax is tech related. Moreover, the region has the highest percentage of Black STEM professionals in the United States and ranks the best for gender diversity in the field. We also lead in small businesses. My district, for example, there are 17,000 small business employers, which is number 2 in the state, but we have the largest number of small business employees with 194,000, the largest in the state. Our district is home to thousands of small businesses that are minority owned and operated. Roughly 128,000 businesses in Northern Virginia are minority owned, 128,000. That accounts for 42% of all the businesses in the area, well above the national average of 29%. Amid the COVID-19 pandemic, we've seen the inequities minority-owned small businesses face or have experienced as exacerbated. Minority-owned businesses have 3 main risk factors that put them at a higher danger for detrimental impacts from the COVID-19. One is that minority-owned businesses tend to be smaller in size. Second, minority-owned businesses are usually in elevated risk industries like the food industry or the retail industries. And lastly, business owners of color have less access to capital and face discrimination often when seeking financing or investment. With these factors in mind, we made a concerted effort to ensure that federal dollars were making it to minority businesses through programs such as the dedicated funding for the Minority Business Development Agency, and importantly, providing $10 billion in funding for the State Small Business Credit Initiative, which can support minority business access to capital. Last year, the SBA, the Small Business Administration, provided more than $400 billion, with a B, dollars in financial assistance to more than 6 million small businesses throughout the Paycheck Protection Program, the Restaurant Revitalization Fund, the Shuttered Venue Operations Grant, the COVID Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program, and COVID EIDI Targeted and Supplemental Advance Programs. Billions of dollars flowed to those programs. SBA has provided financial grants to more than 75% of all small businesses in America during the pandemic. Furthermore, we're working here at the local level, find ways to serve our local small business community, especially minority-owned businesses. Federal COVID funding was used to establish the Fairfax RISE grant program, which distributed $51,565,000 to various small businesses to provide immediate relief for small businesses impacted by the virus. As of November of last year, 4,809 RISE awards were approved and distributed through Fairfax County alone. More than 72% of the organizations receiving these grants were small businesses owned by women, minorities, and veterans. In addition, about half Of the 52 million in relief RISE funding went toward minority-owned businesses, which was far above the 30% target the program originally set. This is the type of direct and purposeful action we need in order to ensure our minority small businesses aren't overlooked. But it's not enough to talk about what has been done. We have to have an eye towards recovery and reinvestment that creates new opportunities for those who seek them. In the coming year, Fairfax is going to receive another tranche of $100 million in the federal COVID relief funding to expand on the lifeline provided by programs like RISE. And funding from the $1.2 trillion infrastructure bill that we passed last year will start getting spent in communities all across the country, including especially here. In fact, in the metropolitan area, it's estimated that we're going to receive $18 billion additional dollars for infrastructure investment. My friend and colleague Bobby Scott is going to provide a detailed presentation on the unique opportunities that bill creates for minority businesses in particular, but I just wanted to hit some of the highlights for our region. The National Capital Region, as I said, is on schedule to get somewhere north of $18 billion. The bill includes roads, bridges, and major projects. Rail, $66 billion for rail projects, including money for VRE and Metro here in Northern Virginia. Airports, $25 billion, including at least $50 million each for Dulles and national airports. Broadband, and broadband's really important. Broadband is the great equalizer. Broadband is to the 21st century what rural electrification was in the Great Depression years of the 1930s. It equalizes opportunity, educational opportunity, job opportunity, educational opportunity. And finally, making sure that broadband is universal and available to everybody, no matter where they live, inner city, rural America, suburban America, really critical. And there's $65 billion to finally get that done. Resilience, another $47 billion for climate resilience, including $250 million for the Chesapeake Bay program. Electric vehicle charging, $7.5 billion to build electric vehicle charging stations, including $106 million for Virginia over 5 years to support the expansion of those programs. This bill is law. The funding and opportunities it creates are real, and we're going to make sure this once in a generation level of investment works for everybody in the Commonwealth of Virginia. On the last point, I'm happy to welcome Bobby Scott, who's going to talk at more length, but who also was one of the key architects as the chairman of the committee in giving us this far-reaching, visionary infrastructure investment program. Before I hand the floor over to Bobby Scott, I did get one question, and I thought I'd answer it before I have to run. And that was, the question is, I know the infrastructure bill provides a lot of funding for projects that addresses climate change. Can you give us an idea of what that includes? And will small businesses be able to compete either as prime contractors or subcontractors? How will this play out in your opinion? So climate change costs America, we think now, about $100 billion, but is heavily affecting life and livelihood throughout the nation. There is a lot that is environmentally oriented in the infrastructure bill that will help us reduce emissions, ensuring that we get to our commitment by reducing emissions 50 to 52% from 2005 levels by 2030, create 100% carbon pollution-free power sector by 2035, and achieve a net zero economy by net zero emissions economy by 2050. For our small businesses, that will grow our economy, lower consumer costs, create jobs, and ensure more Americans can participate fully. Just some of the highlights of that: public transit, the largest investment in passenger rail since the creation of Amtrak, $66 billion to provide healthy, sustainable transportation options, including, I might add, my bill on Metro was included almost entirely in the infrastructure bill, which provides a 10-year funding stream for capital investment for Metro, which will stabilize Metro once we start to emerge reemerge from this pandemic. Electrical vehicle infrastructure. It will invest $7.5 billion to build out the first ever national network of electric vehicle chargers throughout the country, including, of course, as I mentioned, here in Virginia. Clean school buses. The deal invests in zero and low emission school buses finally, so that we get rid of those big diesel gushing, polluting buses that our children have to ride on every day. And that will be transformative for our school systems and will be a huge improvement in terms of local air emissions and air quality. Clean drinking water. As we saw in the tragedy of Flint, Michigan, many older water systems are filled with lead and other kinds of toxic substances and chemicals. The bill provides $55 billion to expand access to clean drinking water. And candidly, a lot of the systems we're talking about are in minority communities like Flint. They've long been neglected. They need to be replaced and upgraded. This is going to help provide jobs in minority communities especially, but also, maybe most importantly, improve the health and welfare of people throughout our urban areas. And finally, clean energy transmission. There's $65 billion in this bill, the largest investment in clean energy in American history, to provide new transmission and electric grid, upgrade the grid throughout the country. And I think, so the opportunities are going to be immense. The dollar is very significant. And final point, remember on infrastructure, infrastructure is not an expenditure only, it is an investment. It is an investment with a return on it. And so it's going to be a gift that keeps on giving for generations, just like, for example, the interstate highway system was. That was created 70 years ago, but it is a gift that keeps on giving. Likewise, this infrastructure investment bill. So with that, let me hand the floor over to my friend, my colleague, and one of the key architects, not only of the COVID relief bills, but of this critical infrastructure investment bill, my friend, the Dean of the Virginia delegation, Bobby Scott.
Thank you, Jerry, and thank you for all of your good work and what you've done for Northern Virginia and the Commonwealth of Virginia over a long period of time, starting with your service on the Board of Supervisors with Fairfax County and a long-time career, very effective career in the United States Congress. So it is a pleasure to be with you, and I want to thank President Washington, Deidre Trent, and George Mason University for bringing us together for this important discussion. This legislation, as Jerry has pointed out, was a much needed investment in jobs in our economy as we rebuild America's infrastructure, including roads, bridges, public transit, ports, broadband, and others to recover from the COVID-19 pandemic. And in the process, create millions of jobs. The estimate is for the next 10 years, about 1.5 million jobs per year. Now we know we have to go beyond just recovering from COVID-19 if we're going to address the persistent disparities in our economy and keep America competitive in the global market. And that is what we did by passing this legislation. For years, politicians campaigned on making massive new investments in jobs by rebuilding America's crumbling infrastructure. But we finally did it. President Biden, working with Congress, finally delivered the results with a bipartisan bill that delivered, received support throughout the political spectrum in the Senate. And we had enough votes across the aisle to call it bipartisan in the House. But it's a great piece of work, and politicians are bragging about the good work and the good elements of the job, whether they voted for it or not. So I think we did a good piece of work. The Biden administration has also said that we'll work together as one team with one mission to implement the infrastructure law and build back a better America. And we're going to have to work with governors, mayors, tribal leaders, business owners, union members, and community leaders across the country to get the job done on task, on time, and on budget. For Virginia, Jerry's talked about many of the details. The law invests about $7 billion in federal highway programs, up to $500 million for bridge replacement and repairs, over $1 billion for public transportation, and this is just the start. There are also funds to build out the network of electric vehicle chargers, and that's critical. Somebody's got to make the first step. People will not buy electric cars if the charging stations aren't there. You're not going to invest in charging stations if people haven't bought the electric cars. And so this bill just starts it off and putting those charging stations out there. And as people buy electric cars, I'll guarantee you that every restaurant within a mile of an interstate will have charging stations at that restaurant. So it won't be a problem once people start buying those cars. The pandemic exposed, as Jerry mentioned, problems we have with households not having access to broadband. When there's a significant investment in broadband, we saw this. I chaired the Committee on Education and Labor, and we saw schools close and people tried to learn remotely. That a lot of people were not connected to the internet. Some in areas where there was no broadband, other areas where they couldn't afford the broadband, and that is a problem all over the country. And we'll receive in Virginia over $100 million to build out and close the broadband gap. There's also funding, as Jerry mentioned, to replace lead pipes to ensure safe drinking water. Also investments in airports, rail, ports, other investments, and a lot of people are talking about inflation caused by the chain supply issues. Well, this bill actually invests in ports to clean up those challenges, making transportation generally, particularly the ports, more efficient. Just a month ago, it was announced that the Portsmouth Marine Terminal will get $20 million to construct staging and storage areas for wind turbine components, strengthening the offshore wind supply chain. The Norfolk Harbor Deepening and Widening Project will be receiving over $69 million to deepen and widen the channel, which will make Hampton Roads Port more efficient. And the City of Norfolk Coastal Storm Risk Management Project received $250 million to reduce and manage flooding in the city. And this is just some of the local projects in Hampton Roads, and it's just the beginning. There are many more state and local projects that will be receiving funding. I have to note that some of the funding may require additional appropriations, but those appropriations will be done. But the $1.9 trillion will go a long way in making those investments that Jerry talked about. The bill also has made permanent more than double the funding and expanded the Minority Business Development Agency, the MBDA. The COVID-19 pandemic, as Jerry pointed out, disproportionately impacted minority-owned businesses. And he talked about some of the reasons behind that. But the legislation creates regional MBDA offices and rural business centers through historically Black colleges and universities and minority-serving institutions, where they will be able to expand access to those services. It also increases the number and scope of existing programs to increase the MBDA's grant-making capacity. The regional offices are able to help with technical assistance when applying for contracts. And while it'll take some time to get all that up and running, the best way to be alerted to new opportunities is to sign up with the MBDA centers, and you can do that specifically in Virginia by going to mbda.gov, and there'll be a way to sign up for any information as it comes out. I also encourage you to use the resources available through your local small business development centers, and you can find those at sba.gov, and then click local assistance. The Department of Transportation has the Disadvantaged Business Enterprise Program to level the playing field by providing small businesses, owned and controlled, socially and economic disadvantaged individuals, a fair opportunity to compete for federal funding in transportation contracts. The transportation bill has been one area where we've been particularly successful in having affirmative action provisions in the legislation. And these offices are run at the state level and are important that you register with the Virginia Department of Transportation as a DBE to best participate in federal contracting opportunities. Now, when you talk about affirmative action, you've got to recognize that those programs are under constant attack. Just today or yesterday, the Supreme Court accepted cases of affirmative action in college admissions, and that may forecast what they're going to do in other affirmative action programs. That law has been back and forth on 5-4 votes for about 30 years. And it's going to be interesting to see what they do on those bills, but we have to always be cognizant of the fact that affirmative action is always at risk. So there are a lot of transformative investments in the infrastructure law that we are excited for as we look to the future and moving beyond the pandemic and associated economic crisis. And I look forward to seeing these funds transform our infrastructure in Virginia and ensuring that everyone can participate in the anticipated economic growth. And one of the areas that's within the jurisdiction of my committee, Education and Labor, is the Department of Labor programs, OFCCP, the Office of Federal Contract Compliance Programs, and the EEOC, which help make sure that whether you're a minority business or not, the jobs available in these contracts are available to everyone. EEOC will respond to complaints and on individual cases, maybe class actions, but OFCCP, the Office of Federal Contract Compliance Programs, has an obligation under the law to require affirmative action amongst federal contractors. And so that office could be used aggressively to create many employment opportunities that are funded by this infrastructure bill. So I look forward to working with my colleagues in Congress and the Biden administration to implement the law and to help build back a better America. And I look forward to the discussion on how we can help minority businesses get their fair share. So thank you, Sandra, and thank you, President Washington, and thank you, Deidre.
Thank you, Congressman Scott. Also a special thank you to Congressman Connolly. We know he had to leave. But before I bring on our next guest, I have to just say some of the introductory factors with Congressman Scott. Congressman Scott has represented the 3rd Congressional District of Virginia since 1993. And I just have to put this plug in as well. Congressman Scott has spent his entire professional life promoting an agenda to advance equity in education, health, criminal justice, and business. In 1994, he started an event called Virginia Day on Capitol Hill. The purpose of the event was to bring MBEs to the Capitol Hill to meet with agencies to learn about contracting opportunities with the federal government. And look at what Mason is doing, George Mason is doing. They're also kind of can take a part of your lead, Congressman Scott, of bringing everybody together so that they can hear about the infrastructure bill that you help architect and to find out how they can get contracts on not only on the federal government side, but also on the states across the country in the DOTs in the transportation. So Congressman Scott, we thank you for your service. Now I want to go on and introduce Mr. Maurice Henderson. Mr. Maurice Henderson II serves as Senior Advisor in the Office of the Secretary. Henderson has served in leadership roles both domestically and internationally in the public and private sectors, as well as on a number of political and advocacy campaigns. Most recently, Henderson was Senior Director of the U.S. Government Partnerships at the transportation technology startup BirdRise, Inc. Previously, Henderson served as a member of the Oregon Transportation Commission, North American Bike Share Association, Green Roads Foundation, and Fourth Mobility. Mr. Henderson will also be joined by Michelle Harris, Manager for the Office of Small and Disadvantaged Business Utilization. And Mr. Henderson, I'm going to do a plug. I don't know if you remember, but we served in Governor's Kane administration along with Dietrich Trent. So it's good to see you again, sir.
Yes, wondered to see you as well.
Yes, please welcome Mr. Henderson. Thank you so much.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me, President Washington, Dr. Trent. Pleasure to be with George Mason, and certainly an honor for me to be on this panel with both Representatives Scott and Connolly. To Sandra's point, I still have lots of ties to Virginia. My parents reside still now in Donald McEachin's district, which used to be covered by Congressman Scott, but have friends and family in both Northern Virginia and in the Hampton Roads. And I know Virginia is so blessed to have such great congressional representation. I will be brief. I think you all are going to advance my slides for me, Sandra, on your end. So if you all can pull those up just to share. So again, thanks for having me. Maurice Henderson with the Department of Transportation, Senior Advisor to the Secretary, and joined by Michelle Harris. I'll be quite quick. So if we want to go to the next slide, please. As both Congressman Scott and Congressman Connolly mentioned, the bipartisan infrastructure law, or the EJA, as they were referencing, is a transformative, once in a generation, probably once in a lifetime investment opportunity. It upscales the level of investment that we've seen traditionally in Congress. The increases are across the board, not just in transportation, in terms of the funding and resources available, and hopefully to Congressman Scott's latter point, that increase in funding and resource will be felt and be engaged by the small business, particularly minority small business community, women-owned small business community that are here on this call with us. Just so you have some sense of that, the department is seeing a 44% increase over our general year-over-year appropriations from the FAST Act. As some sense of scale for you, we've also got our partners at EPA are seeing probably the largest increase, technically about 200%. DOE 45%. The reason I bring those up is across the whole of government, Congress and with the president's leadership saw the need to ensure that there were resources available to make sure that this new transformative investment is one that's felt by communities that have traditionally not been able to participate and fully feel the benefit. And so there's a lot of our federal agency partners that are also seeing increases to their budgets over this 5-year period. As you can see on this slide, based on the appropriations, our partners at FHWA, which has received the largest share of the $660 billion, $365 billion of that is going to FHWA. 110 of that is in new money. As both Congressman Scott and Congressman Connolly mentioned several times, the FTA, our Federal Transit Authority, is seeing a huge increase, the largest increase in funding for public transit. For FRA, that $102 billion, there's 66 within that. That is the new, which is a new and again tremendously unprecedented level of funding since the creation of Amtrak. Our folks at NHTSA are seeing an $8 billion package. These are the folks who handle our safety. PHMSA, those who are in the trucking, and Congressman Scott mentioned the supply chain issues, $5 billion. MARAD, the folks at Maritime, $2 billion, and within the Office of the Secretary, and just for your edification, the Office of the Secretary has about 1,100 different employees with various offices, including OSDBUD, which Ms. Harris is at the Office of Small Disadvantaged Business Utilization. So lots of new programs within that. And just at DOT, just so you have another sense of the scale, we're going to be implementing over 100 new programs that Congress has saw fit to move forward with. So very excited about these opportunities. We can go to the next slide. And so this is sort of a breakdown of some of those. I won't go through every single one of these, but this represents both the discretionary pool of dollars as well as the formula programs. Lots of interest in the level of funding that will go directly to states and localities and non-traditional stakeholders. So one of the things that we find is a really critically important element of the bill is the Bridge Formula Program. And not this past Friday, but the Friday previous, the president, the secretary, and others made mention and hosted events across the country in partnership with mayors and local authorities on the bridge funding program. By appropriation and formula, you're going to see about $28 billion, and that's going to thousands, tens of thousands of bridges across the country. As you probably heard the president mention, and I think either Congressman Scott or Congressman Connolly mentioned, there are significantly economically and regionally significant roads and bridges. That program is enveloped there. Beneath that is the investment program, around $16 billion. That is where the competitive discretionary opportunities will be. The president's mentioned several times that the 10 most significant bridges across the country, but there are at least 10,000 that will need to be addressed. And I believe Virginia has about 857 or so bridges that fall into poor condition, as well as over 2,000 miles of roadway. As the congressman mentioned, there's about $7.5 billion for the EV charging network and supporting the expansion of EV vehicles within the consumer pool. $5 billion of that will be formula funding or available direct dollars. $2.5 billion of that will be discretionary competitive grants. There's an additional $7.5 billion, as I believe it was Congressman Connolly mentioned, that will go towards low and no emission buses, particularly on transit lines and conversion of school buses. So we're really excited about that work. We're also doing a lot of work around the reduction of emissions in port facilities. Both congressmen mentioned a lot of the focus around environmental investments. So that's $400 million represented there. I think what the other piece that is relevant here, the president at the beginning of the administration back last year in January signed about 33 executive orders, I think it was on day one of which highlighted Justice 40. For those who are not familiar with the concept of Justice 40, is basically that 40% of the investment around environmental justice issues will go to disproportionately underserved communities. So Black and Brown communities, tribal communities, et cetera, will see the largest benefit. And that's programmatic activity and a framing that the administration writ large is leveraging. You can see this $15 billion that's addressed for mega projects. So that's some of these projects out there with extraordinary complexity, where there might be some funding gaps in programs. There's, like I mentioned, the $110 million in new dollars for roads and bridges and things of that nature. There may be some capacity issues for localities, state DOTs, et cetera. So this pot of money is available for that. I will also just point out the RAISE and infra grants real quick. So we did a round of RAISE grants last year. Many of you will be familiar with those being called BUILD grants during the Trump presidency, and during Obama it was called Tiger. So those discretionary funds last year accounted for about $1 billion in investments, and there were, I think it was 90 plus projects that were selected with this new bill, BIL. There's going to be about 1.5 billion this year, and in the next week or two, we'll see some guidance coming out. The other really important discretionary program is the infra opportunities, and that again is another level of investment that's also a discretionary pot of money. Last year, I think it was a little over $800 million worth of projects that were granted. I believe we're up to 1.3 based on congressional support. And then the culvert replacement and restoration, as Congressman Connolly mentioned, the president has been hyper focused on ensuring that lead pipe remediation, service line remediation happens. So that larger sum of money, the $47 billion that he mentioned, along with climate resiliency, is something that we are hyper focused on supporting. That will mostly be going through in partnership with our friends at Commerce and Energy and Interior, and more to come there. Next slide, please. So a couple of just quick things. I think most people know the president signed the bill and the law back in November. What we've been doing over here at DOT is we are engaging across a broad spectrum of stakeholders. In fact, this weekend, the secretary is going to be meeting with the National Governors Association. We've been holding meetings like this one. So again, very much appreciate George Mason and the leadership that the university communities out there providing and making sure that folks have access to this information. We've done several state level briefings. I personally work with our intergovernmental relations team and others to ensure that local stakeholders, particularly those who have traditionally not been part of the federal process, are aware of some of the funding opportunities. Some of the guidance for those programs and whatnot is still yet to come. But for those who are interested, many of the events that we've done already in the past few months are available on YouTube. So our partners at FTA, FHWA, FAA, Federal Aviation Administration, are all available on YouTube. We also have a website dedicated to bill implementation. So as you can see here, www.transportation.gov/bipartisan-infrastructure-law. And then for those, we may not get to all the questions today, but our team at OPE, our Office of Public Engagement, has an email, and that's just engage, ENGAGE, @dot.gov, that you can reach out to them, and that goes to a pretty broad cross section of folks. So it's not one person having to man a person that particular inbox. Next slide, please. So a couple quick things that folks should know, and I know Congressman Scott and Congressman Connolly and their colleagues are working diligently on this, as people are probably tracking. There's a continuing resolution at the moment. So some of the appropriations that have been detailed in this discussion are not quite available just yet, but we have full faith in the leadership of Speaker Pelosi in the House and Leader Schumer in the Senate that we'll be able to get those full appropriations available to us to begin working across a broad cross section of Americans, and certainly want to make sure that our small business partners are a critically important part of that discussion. Next slide. You can go to the next slide. Thank you. And so a couple of things here that was pointed out. Obviously, the administration has a really strong commitment to environmental justice and climate goals. And so, for example, the charging infrastructure plan is something that we're working robustly with our partners at the Department of Energy. Within the bill, there was a appropriation of, I believe it was $300 million to stand up a joint DOT-DOE partnership. There's also pending legislation out there for a similar joint office with the Housing and Urban Development HUD agency. As you can see, we've been busy already, even without full authority on some of the funding. We've been moving forward on a number of different opportunities. FAA recently announced its airport improvements program. There's about $2.89 billion in that program, and that went out to over 3,000 airports across the country. That's for tower modernization, facilities modernizations at our own FAA facilities, funding taxiways, et cetera. And as I mentioned in the first slide, NHTSA, which is our safety partners, and just recently announced $260 million in highway safety grants for states, territories, and tribes. I think the last slide is next. And here's just a breakdown of some of the other opportunities and dates that are coming out. I know there's a lot of interest, both in quote discretionary, but also how our formula funding will work. Our FHWA partners put out guidance called the Build a Better America memo, or the BABAM, and that gives guidance on how we are interpreting our abilities to work with states and localities on those formula dollars, as well as those discretionary dollars, in terms of focusing on equity and climate outcomes. The broadband initiatives that both Congressman Scott and Congressman Connolly mentioned are critically important to the Secretary and to the President. So there's full focus there for how we can be in joint partnership with our friends at Commerce. As you can see, there's a few dates coming up here in the very near future around EV charging guidance on the 28th. There will be another set of guidance that goes out on February 11th. Then we will get the standards remedied and ready to go by mid-May. There will also be, as I mentioned, several announcements coming soon, including RAISE, but there'll be RFI, RFP opportunities related to build programs at FHWA as well as other events, and then general updates for those who are in the construction space or professional services spaces. There's emergency funding, as part of the ARP or the American Rescue Plan dollars that Congressman Scott mentioned, the 1.9 trillion that the president signed into law earlier this year. We've been continuing to distribute those dollars based on both the climate challenges that we've seen and other challenges throughout the country where people are experiencing hardships. The PIDP program for Marine, $250 million was recently announced. Marine highway improvements in terms of supporting port infrastructure, 12.6. And then FRA just made some announcements around intercity rail. So our friends at BRE and Mark here in the National Capital Region will be taking advantage of those to the tune of nearly $200 million. I want to pause because I know we're running short on time and give Michelle a quick moment to jump in and share things from the OSPDU perspective. Hey, Michelle.
Sorry. Thank you. I'm sorry, I was muted. I apologize. Thank you. So again, I'm really happy to be with you all today. It's a privilege to be able to share information from the Office of Small Business here at DOT. Again, I'm Michelle Harris. I work in the Office of Small and Disadvantaged Business Utilization here at the department. The primary goal of our office is to ensure that the Secretary's small business goals and policies are implemented and create an atmosphere of equal opportunity for small businesses to compete for work. We do that internally with our operating administrations around their specific contracting opportunities as it relates to direct procurement to work with small businesses to procure goods and services. And then we also do it on a state level via our small business transportation resource centers. They operate very similarly to our sister agency, the SBA's small business development centers, but our minority resource center program or our small business transportation resource centers are specifically there to support small businesses that are in the transportation and civil construction space. And so they truly understand some of the nuances in working in that space around bonding, capital, construction, and they have a high level of expertise to provide support to small businesses that are looking to gain access to opportunities in that space. Specifically, with the bipartisan infrastructure law, our regional centers are now gearing up to provide that one-on-one technical assistance to small businesses that want to do business on these projects. We do understand that we have 11 regional offices, we only have 11 centers, and so we can't do it on our own. And to make sure that our small businesses don't fall through the cracks, we are partnering with our sister agencies to provide wraparound services and leverage resources in support of what our small businesses need to be ready to compete for these opportunities. So in light of our time, and I want to make sure there's ample opportunity for questions, I'm going to give you our website. It's www.transportation.gov/OSDBU. There you can find our information, you can find our procurement forecast on opportunities, and you can find under resources near you where we have our regional small business transportation resource centers. And with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Maurice.
Thank you. I think that closes us out and certainly want to give time for a few questions if possible, President Washington and Sandra. Thank you for the opportunity today and partnership with George Mason.
Mr. Henderson and Ms. Harris, thank you so much. We are running out of time and we got a lot of questions in. Make sure you all, the participating audience, look on the website, look at those links, go up there for more information. But Congressman Scott, I have a question for you, sir. How does the infrastructure legislation balance the playing field among large medium, and small businesses. I know the larger firms have the capacity to do things smaller firms do not. But how can we make sure that no sector, even within the small business community, is not disadvantaged?
Well, one of the first things we did was the expansion of the minority business development agencies, which means more information and more support will be available. We significantly increased the funding and access to those. The administration has said it's going to do, it's going to focus on making sure that this happens, that people get a fair opportunity. But as I indicated, affirmative action has been under attack for many years. But the transportation funding, for a number of reasons, we've been able to get a 10% set aside for small businesses owned by socially and economically disadvantaged individuals. And that has been there for a good little while. It's survived. And so as long as that's there, at least 10% will be available for small socially and economically disadvantaged businesses. The administration will be aggressive. We're going to be doing oversight on OFCCP and EEOC to make sure they're doing their jobs on employment opportunities with all contractors. But that 10% set aside will be that when you're talking $1.9 trillion, 10% is a lot of money.
Thank you, sir. All right, Dr. Washington, we're going to turn it over to you. Thank you all for having me this afternoon. I really appreciate it. This was a great opportunity for our businesses to learn more and just have us share information with you. Again, thank you all. Dr. Washington?
Well, I want to thank everyone from Representative Scott, Representative Connolly, Maurice Henderson, Sandra Norman, and of course, our folk at GMU TV, Deetra Trent, and many of the others who participated in putting this together. You can't have a good program like this without some really, really dedicated people working behind the scenes to make it all possible. And I am eternally grateful. Look, I felt like I was drinking through a fire hose. You all put out, there is so much information here. What I want you all to do, you may not have gotten all of the info, but it's clear that there were a host of websites that you can go to where you can refer and gather that information. We will also try to put together a briefing sheet for all of you that actually has some of the key websites that you can go through in order to find information. Remember, our goal is to get these dollars in your hands and to ensure that this particular piece of legislation actually has a core benefit to everyone, and that includes many of the people on this call. I want to thank you. I thank you for making George Mason a part of this, and I look forward to being an integral part of your lives as we move forward. Thank you. God bless, and look forward to talking with you all next time.